Hello and welcome to the Passion Driven Pioneers interview series. I'm your host, John Channon, and today I'm joined by Andrew Eklund, who is the founder of Ciceron. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, would you like to just kind of get us started with a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and the business that you're in?
Yeah, well, I've been running the same digital agency now for it'll be 30 years next summer.
Wow.
I started the agency when I was 26 years old. I guess I just told you how old I am, but when I was 26 years old at the dawn of the internet, and we were one of the first digital agencies for sure in the Twin Cities, if not the country, and maybe one of the last of the remaining OG digital agencies around. And it's been an amazing journey, as you can imagine. The internet never sleeps and it never stops innovating. And so my agency today looks very, very different than the one that I started, and will look very different 10 years from now than it is now.
You used the term OG agency.
Yeah,
What does that stand for? What does that
the
mean?
original. Yeah, well,
Original.
actually, I think there's probably a different one that I'm not sure if it's exactly safe for podcast, but yeah, it's a term used by people much younger than me more often.
Okay, I got it. Cool. So what kind of inspired you to start this business, or was there an initial spark that kind of led you to get into this at age 26?
Yeah, well, yeah, in the early 90s, I was involved in an industry that was already largely digital, and it was in the digital prepress industry. And at that time, the internet was, well, barely a thing. People were accessing the internet via things like AOL and, Prodigy and all of this. And, the browser wasn't invented until, what, 93. The web itself was invented in 91. And I just happened to find myself spending a lot of time in the Bay Area as a result of being in that industry. And when the internet really started to take off, I was really immediately attracted to it, and I just thought that it was a great sort of leveling of the playing field for brands of all sizes, considering that advertising of that era was largely dominated by television, cable television, radio, newsprint, magazines, and so forth. And this new medium was coming up, and I had been involved even before I started the agency in the internet. And when I was in the Bay Area where a lot of innovations happen, and especially in the early 90s. And I just caught the bug and just said this is something that I wanted to do. And in 95, that summer, the late summer of 95, I started the agency. And it was it was interesting because people say, "Oh, well, what were you doing back then?" And I spent probably the good first 5 years of my agency, quite honestly, convincing people that the internet was a real permanent thing. We had the dot-com crash in 2000, early May of 2000, and I think there were a lot of people who were like, "Well, that was that. Let's get back to the way we were doing things in the past." And of course, there were a couple of other companies that were lurking in the scenes, namely a company called Amazon and a company called Google. They had different ideas about that, and so we stuck with it, and here we are. At that point now, 25 years after that first crash.
Yeah, that's great. That's a pretty good little story there. So
Yeah.
talk to us about those first few years of starting up a business. I know it was a while ago, but if you
Yeah.
could just tell us about what that experience was like, and if there was anything that you kind of came in thinking it would be like, but it was different.
Well, I mean, everything was different than what I expected because I had never done it before, and I was quite young. But it was interesting because I was young, but because the internet was so new, I had subject matter expertise. I mean, there wasn't as though you spent 20, 30 years of your career and all of a sudden you were an expert in something that was brand new. And so I do feel like I kind of caught lightning in a bottle at that time. And it gave me some confidence to say, well, I mean, nobody's an expert at this point. And I think maybe I'm starting on the 15-yard line, so I felt like I had a little bit of a head start. I had some really good relationships with people in the technology field already. And then I think the other thing, especially for your listeners, who are maybe young and thinking about taking that leap, I was married, or I still continue to be married to the same woman at 26, but we had no kids yet, and the risks were, it was just between her and I, and we weren't putting a lot of our family at risk, and a lot of different things. And I think that's why you see a lot of entrepreneurs get their start, at that sort of early 20s, mid 20s times, because the risk of failure isn't going to take down a bunch of people other than yourself and maybe a significant other, and you can kind of bounce back from that, and realize you have a long life ahead of you. And where it's, I'm still doing startup work, here in my mid 50s, and it's a different dynamic when you're in your mid 50s and looking probably a little more at retirement than you are the rest of your life. So I encourage people who are young, who are have a lot of energy to jump in. No entrepreneur ever succeeds by not taking risk. And so anybody who does it is going to have to take a risk at some point. And when you look at those life circumstances, that 20s time frame is such a great time to do it. And it's almost like, especially if you're in an innovation space, you're not really at that time in your life, you're not really, you don't have a lot of bias built in yet. You don't have a lot of like, well, we've always done it this way. Well, you haven't done anything yet. So, to a certain extent, there's really no baggage to prevent you from making really bold decisions.
Tell us a little bit about what maybe that work-life balance. You mentioned you didn't have kids when you started this, but what was that work-life balance like at the beginning, and how has that now changed over time, or has it changed?
Yeah, because of the industry that I'm in, because we're in the technology space, and now, of course, with AI being a really almost an all-consuming thing for me personally and for the agency, um, I'm always in startup mode. I mean, I've never not felt as though I'm part of a startup, because our service is changing, our services are changing all the time. The technology is changing all the time, and at times I need to change my staff considerably, as we need new skills and talents to bring that in. And so you're almost always working if you count the mental energy that you put into it. And so, yeah, work-life balance is really, really important. And I'm fortunate that I've had many other interests outside of work. You know, I I love to play tennis. I love to see live music. I love art. So I really try, and I'm married to an artist, and so I get to sometimes travel along with her. And you just need to make time for the things that are really outside of what you do. I see a lot of people who have hobbies that are sort of ancillary to their work, and that's not quite balanced at that point. You really need to find that the stuff that really brings you joy. And I also think that you need to find something that's going to keep you healthy. And so I've really, like I said, I really love playing tennis. I play several times a week. I play in different leagues. It's amazing what smashing a little yellow ball around for a couple of hours will do for your mental health, your physical health, and just your energy that you need to continue to be an entrepreneur when things come at you sideways all the time. And so it can become all consuming. It's a danger. And so you really do need to commit to the things that really also just kind of keep everything, you as a human, sort of in balance, and making sure that you make time for that.
Yes, I appreciate you sharing that with us. I'm going to shift a little bit here, and you brought up AI earlier, which seems to be the rage of the last 12 months. But how do you guys stay adaptable, open to change, and remain innovative in your industry?
It's a good question, and we've been very good over the past 30 years of picking up trends early. That's just, history does repeat itself. The technology comes and goes, platforms come and go, and consumer behaviors are enormously ambiguous and nomadic. And so what we try and do all the time is pick up the signals of the marketplace of what's happening in technology. When is it hitting that sort of hockey stick curve? And knowing full well, by the way, that any emerging technology always has a hype cycle that goes up fairly fast, and then it crashes, but it doesn't crash down to where it was before. It's at a higher point, and then it usually rises again. And then the ones that stick around, sometimes almost forever. So We're very good, I think, at picking up on signals in the marketplace, specifically around AI. When ChatGPT was launched in November of 2022, I think I'm right. Yeah, 2022. And I started playing around with it. I mean, we were already working in the field of machine learning, which is sort of a cousin of AI. Although a lot of technology people these days are sort of reskinning their machine learning capabilities and calling it AI, but I personally think it's a very different thing. And when I was playing quite literally with ChatGPT in the early days, it made immediate sense to me that this was extremely powerful. This is like having the a team of the world's smartest people literally on your staff for free. And so for me to say, I have to lean into this, right? This provides scale, this provides intelligence, this provides efficiencies, and most importantly, it provides, some of the world's greatest technology that's been built, in my opinion, available to the masses to learn from and to play with and to start applying. I think what I found in AI is that the most adoption in AI right now on an individual basis is most of it's on an individual basis before it's at the corporate level or anything else like that. People are just starting to incorporate it in their lives. And I think you're seeing people use AI in ways that are what I would consider very small steps in the right direction. But it's not search, and I think people think of it as like search. Like I'll type into ChatGPT what I might type into Google, and those are two very different things. So for example, when I'm working in AI, the prompts, the things that I ask it to do, sometimes are paragraphs long. I'm explaining a business problem. I'm explaining it in as much detail as I have available to, or I have access to, or knowledge of. And then I'm able to then also provide to the AI itself, other documents, supporting documents, and, presentations and research studies and data with tables and all of this. And it learns on that, right? All of that documentation. It then pulls in all the other stuff that you don't have access to because it's combing the internet and indexing the entire internet. And then you also are adding that layer of the context that as a professional. So the output that you get isn't an answer. An answer. It's a fully baked out you're looking for. A lot of people say that that it hallucinates, right? And I say, well, have you tried it? Because built on top of, they're evolving every single day. The battle for market share among these major players is just stunning. And the billions of dollars that are being spent. So what it may have done yesterday in making up things, and it doesn't seem to make sense, it's just so much more refined, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay.
Could you offer us a glimpse into your future plans and goals that you have for your business?
Well, as I mentioned, AI is our future. There's no question about that. It's everybody's future. And I shouldn't say there's no question about that. I think a lot of people are not there yet. I'm certainly there that there's no question that this is our future. And we can't even imagine exactly what it's going to take place. So right now, the future for my agency is I'm trying to help our clients go on this new journey with AI. Is I'm kind of repeating what I did back in 1995 to 2000, which was to convince people the internet was a thing. And so now it's the AI revolution. And so, what we're doing is behind the scenes, we're scaling up all of our own skills, our new technology that we're using, new partners that we work with, new methodologies, new processes. And when I say new, I mean all brand new. And so when you think of it from a startup standpoint, I'm in startup mode again. 30 years later, I'm back in startup mode again. And that keeps me energized, keeps me really engaged. And so the future for us, for the agency, is to continue to leverage this technology, teach, provide, being guests on people's podcasts, going to being on stage at conferences and talking about this, but not just talking about it, because that's the problem with AI. Everyone's talking about it. We want to show people, right? And so this is an incredibly powerful technology that on its surface may seem scary to certain extents because the narrative around it can be scary. People have to write stories about it, right? The robots are going to take over. It's going to lead to World War III. Everyone said the same thing about the internet, believe me. And everyone and many, many companies said they would never put their information on the internet because all their competitors would get it, or nobody will ever put credit cards online because it's not safe. Amazon just entered the room and has a has a different opinion on that. So, we're at the very beginning of a new revolution. I have a lot of energy for it. To a certain extent, what AI provides is what I've always wanted, and that is the ability for companies and people to be smarter, faster, and more attuned to the marketplace. And most importantly, from an empathetic standpoint, to provide greater value to their consumers, whether that's creating better products that are more responsive to the needs of the consumer, which AI provides sort of a guide towards that because it's better information. New products altogether because the marketplace is saying, oh, I wish there's a need out there that this product could fill, or I wish there was a product that would do this or a service that would do this. If you're listening and can apply the technology to listen better to the signals of what people are actually expressing, then you have the opportunity to be a better brand. And that's going to increase market share. It's going to increase shareholder value, stakeholder value, and most importantly, it's going to make consumers happier. And when consumers are happier, businesses are happier. So this technology, while I'm not trying to say it's the end all, be all, save all, it is enormously powerful. And also it's enormously underestimated at this point.
Yeah, I know I've been using some chat GPT on these interviews to
Yeah.
basically summarize this and create my podcast overview that I upload onto my podcast channel. It's
Yeah.
enormously helpful, enormously powerful, and
Yeah.
I believe it's here to stay too. So,
Great.
knowing that this show is targeted towards people who are going to be in their maybe in their first few years of business, do you have any final thoughts or words of advice you'd like to share with our audience today?
Well, as we talked about very early on, I think it's really important when you're young, you know, and you get up near 30, you start thinking you're old. And you're not. You have so much time on your hands, right? Or you feel like a decade's gone by since you graduated from college or something like this. You're young and the the risks that are required to be an entrepreneur, to allow yourself the opportunity to fail many times over until you figure it out. When you're younger, the risks are lower because there's less sort of at stake, and you have the chance to, if you're 60 years old and you fail, it sort of becomes one of those career-ending, tales sometimes, because you're like, do I have enough energy, or will people give me money to do it, or whatever. When you're 30, they expect you to fail, and they're looking for the signals like, oh, you know what, they may have failed, but they have good, entrepreneurial instincts. So let's take another shot at them. So I just tell people, if you appreciate being able to wake up in the morning with an idea and by the afternoon have a prototype and you want to take that out, that's the world that we live in right now. And that's an unprecedented time. And there's people who are willing to take risks on people who have great ideas, who understand the technology and want to create something of value. Um, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of stress for sure. Making payroll is at the end of the day, you're talking about new products and new customers, all these big things. But guess what? Every 2 weeks, people need to get paid so they can put food on their table. And you realize that there's a lot of things that are involved in running a business that has nothing to do with the vision of what you're doing. And you have to be prepared that you're also getting into that. The last thing I'll say about that is the earlier that you can understand what you're good at and what you're not good at is really important, or the things that bring you joy and the things about running a business that don't bring you joy. And if you can, to find people who fill those spaces in your offering, in your talents, that essentially allow them to excel at the things that fundamentally you're not going to excel at, or you're not good at, or you don't enjoy. And as soon as you can do that, you can elevate the joy that you have in your business because the things that you kind of hate is being covered by people who find joy in doing those things. And so don't surround yourself with people like yourself. You'll never get anything done. Surround yourself with people who have those unique skills that are really good at the things that are necessary to succeed as a business, which are really complex, whether that's finance or HR or operations, so that you can be the visionary, right? You can be the people that pulls everybody into the future. And that takes a lot of time and attention. If you're doing that and trying to do payroll and trying to keep your books and trying to run operations and trying to be a visionary at the same time, I think you'll find that you won't get to where you're trying to go as fast. And it's going to be very difficult to be successful that first time around.
Those are great final thoughts, Andrew. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it was really interesting learning about AI and how that's influencing your business. So I appreciate your taking the time to share that with us. And to everyone
Yeah, no, thank
watching,
you.
yep, and to everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.